everyone and welcome. This is Mindy Eggen for Tailored Expressions, and in today's video, I'm going to show you 4 cards that I created using the Hex Effects Cardmaking Kit. The supplies I'm using today is the Hexagon Layering Stencil, Hex Effects Cutting Plate, Hexagon Piercing Plate, Hex Effects TE Maps, Double-Sided Adhesive Sheets, Scattered Meadow Background, All the Best Birthday Sentiments, A2 Layers Stacklets. For ink, I have Sugar Cube, Confetti Cake, Granny Smith, Papaya, Peaches and Cream, and Versifine Nocturne Clear ink. Other supplies that I will be using is my Teal Misty, Barely Arts liquid glue, Post-it tape, reverse tweezers, a die pick, and a pair of scissors, large and small. I have my TE standard blending brushes, Scotch tape, foam strips, thin foam squares, glass board and my glass board buddy, repositionable tape, 6x6 sugar cube cardstock pack. And other cardstock colors include Peaches and Cream, Papaya, Persimmon, Granny Smith, and Confetti Cake. The first card I'm going to start out with is using the stencil. So I have a piece of sugar cube cardstock that is 6x6 and placed it down onto my glass board using my repositionable tape. Then I lined up the first layer of the stencil, held it down with my post-it tape, and the first color I am going to blend with is Peaches and Cream ink. There are 4 layers to this stencil, so I'm going to be using 4 different colors of ink, one for each stencil. After the first layer is done, I'm going to bring in the second layer of the stencil, lining up the registration squares on the right and left-hand side. And the second color I am going to ink with is Papaya ink, starting at the top and working my way down to the bottom, being sure to cover in all of the hexagons on that stencil. I positioned the third layer of the stencil over the top, once again lining up those registration squares. And this time I am coming in with Granny Smith ink. The next ink color that I will be using is Confetti Cake, and every now and then in between my stenciling, I do wipe up the glass surface around my stencil using a paper towel, just so that I don't pick up any of that excess ink with the next color that I'm blending with. That's going to finish off the 4th layer of the stencil. So once I have this complete, I am going to take this over to my Misty and I am going to stamp a pattern over the top. The background that I'm going to be using is the Scattered Meadow. It is a foam mounted stamp, so I removed the foam insert of my Misty tool, placed that down and picked it up with the door of the Misty. Then I placed repositionable tape on the back of my stencil panel and lined that up over my background stamp and then closed the Misty backwards to pick it up. Next, I'm going to ink up the background stamp using Sugar Cube ink. This is going to show up over the stenciled areas, but not over the white lines. Once my white pigment ink is dry, I'm going to die cut out the panel using the A2 Layers Stacklet die, holding that in place with the Scotch removable tape. And then I also die cut out a white panel using the next rectangle above that to give it a white border. And I will be placing this on top of a piece of Persimmon cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm going to place that card off on the side to finish at the end of the video. And now I'm going to be doing some die cutting using the Hex Effects cutting plate. I die cut a panel of Confetti Cake, Granny Smith, Peaches and Cream, Papaya, and Persimmon, all using that Hex Effects cutting plate. Then I chose a design from the TE Maps Hex Effects, and I'm placing a piece of double-sided adhesive sheets over the top. But when I peel it back, I'm only going to reveal the stickiness of just part of it, just so I can keep my hands out of the way. Now I have my whole TE map is completely sticky, and I am going to start placing these designs over the TE map. I started out with Confetti Cake at the top, and I'm going to continue working down in the order that I actually have them placed at the top of the screen. As I worked my way down the front of the panel, I slowly peeled back the backing to reveal more of the sticky sheet. And as I placed each design down, going between the different colors, I am trying to alternate and just mix and match the different designs that the die cut plate provided on each of those hexagons. As I'm placing them down, there is no room in between. They do butt up right next to each other, so you're not going to have any gaps. I had already planned on trimming this panel down once it was completely finished. So as I got down towards the bottom, I'm actually just going to fill in through the rest of the front with the last color. So here I went up with the Confetti Cake, and then the other side I went back in and filled it in with the additional persimmon pieces. To trim it down, I'm once again going to use the A2 Layers Stacklet, hold that down over the front with my Scotch removable tape, run that through the die cut machine, and die cut out the panel. I also die cut out the hexagon piercing plate from white cardstock, and I'm going to be adding that over the top. So for right now, I set that off on the side to finish later, and I'm going to start working on my next card. For this one, I am going to be using a TE map, but more as a visual guide than I am actually using the sheet. To do the next pattern, I did need another color of cardstock, so here I die cut out sweet corn using the Hex Effects cutting plate. I also die cut out a piece of sugar cube cardstock using the hexagon piercing plate. So that's going to give me my guide and it looks just like the TE maps. And then I can just use the map as a guide for my colors. Now, once I had everything in place, I flipped all of my hexagon pieces over and I added thin foam squares to the back. Then I'll just remove the backing and I'm using my tweezers to help me with placement. These again are going to be butted up right next to each other. So I went all the way around to create that design. And then to fill it in on the outer edges, I am using the color before. So above the peaches and cream, I used confetti cake because that was the last color before it. And then I did that same pattern going all the way around, alternating those colors. This card again, I'm going to set off on the side to finish at the end of the video. And I have one more card that I wanted to finish. So when I did all of that die cutting using the Hex Effects cutting plate, I was left with all of these leftover pieces. And I thought I would go ahead and use them by layering them up, but offsetting them. I also die cut out another one using white cardstock, which is going to be my topper piece. And then once I had them in the order that I wanted them to go, I am going to go around all of the outer edges and the inside pieces with my Barely Arts liquid glue. And then I'm going to place them over the top of each other, making sure that the top and bottoms are aligned and then just slightly offsetting it a little bit. Layering up all of these pieces does use up the rest of your scraps, but it also does kind of add a little bit more dimension to your card front than maybe you normally would. I definitely think it's well worth it because it makes a really awesome design. The last piece to go on top is going to be my white cardstock, and then we have this really fun cascading look of hexagons in the background. Now I can work on pulling all of my cards together by stamping my sentiments. And I have All the Best Birthday stamp and die. I wasn't sure exactly which sentiments I wanted to use, so I picked out an extra one. I lined them up onto some sugar cube cardstock, and I'm inking them all up with the VersaFine Nocturne Clair ink. I lined up the coordinating dies with each of them and ran that through my die cut machine. The first card that I'm going to finish off is the one that I had used the layering stencil. So I added a scotch tape behind my layered panel, added that to my white panel to give it the border, and then put foam strips on the back of that and added that to Persimmon cardstock cut to 4¼ by 5½. Then placed thin foam squares behind the sentiment and placed that up towards the top center of my card. The next card I'm finishing is the pattern that I created using the TE maps. So for this one, I did add the foam strips behind that panel and I have a piece of the white cardstock also die cut out with the hexagon piercing plate. Then finished it off by placing my sentiment on the front of my card with the thin foam squares. This card was the one where I used the TE maps as a guide and just placed my sentiment right in the center with a foam square and a little bit of liquid glue on each end of the sentiment. And the final card is the one using my scraps. I did add that to a white card front and then placed the sentiment in the center. And that finishes off the 4 cards that I created using the Hex Effects Card Making Kit. I hope you enjoyed today's inspiration and this really beautiful color palette. And I hope it also gives you some ideas on how you can use the TE maps as a guide or as your actual card front. You can find this kit over at tailoredexpressions.com. Thanks for joining.